should be 2 pages, right? And then at the most depending on your email and what you're looking for, maybe an extra page to get you to 3 pages at the most. And I'm thinking 2 pages is enough. Up to 2 pages, 300. But if you're looking for other stuff, I'd have to evaluate at the time.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna tell you right now, it's gonna be less, 1,000 or less. Okay. You get it, right?
Up to 2 pages.
Up to
Got
2 pages, 300, and I told you the provisions I would add.
it. Okay, got it.
Excuse me, everyone, if I can have your attention, please. We're going to get started with our keynote address. It's 8 p.m. already, so it's already been an incredible hour of networking. So if you could all please wrap up your conversations and you can continue on with those after the keynote address. And if you'd like to come take a seat, get your coffee, your water, and your tea, and take a seat, okay? Thank you.
You want me up there? Yeah.
So he's not going to mic you up anymore, so
Yeah.
we did that.
Yes, I do. Is it on? No, it's not.
All right, everyone, if you want to take a seat now, that would be great. We're going to get started in a few moments, okay? Exactly what I thought it was, but I just want to make sure I Is it too dark? Maybe okay, so we're trying for this. All right, everyone, we're going to get started now. So if you'd like to take a seat, that would be great. Get yourself more water or coffee or tea. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your nights to come to the 17th Generation Z Hamilton Networking event. I'm so grateful to be able to meet many new faces, but also to see many people who I have connected with before, such as David here. So the Generation Z Hamilton Networking event. For those of you that don't know, these are monthly networking events that are held here at Commotion on King. They're usually the second Wednesday of every month from 7 to 9 p.m. Now, the purpose of these events are for entrepreneurs of all ages, but mostly directed towards Generation Z, to come together, to connect with one another, and see how we can support each other. And we also have different programs such as Futurepreneur or Starter Company or Summer Company program who have been here in the past and usually will be here, that can tell you about different funding and mentorship resources and business programs here in Hamilton. And we also like to have our keynote address, which is what we'll be doing here right now. And the purpose of these is to help inspire you as a business owner. Just hearing from someone else's story and their business journey, I hope that it empowers you to achieve your business goals, maybe learn the lessons that they've learned and put them into practice as well. So Generation Z is also a business-related talk show on Cable 14, where we interview young startups about the companies they've began, the process, the challenges, and we also invite business experts, so people who may be not in Generation Z, to share their different tips and strategies on starting a company. And we have our blog and podcast as well, so if you'd like to check us out, it's generationzhamilton.com. But we're gonna get on with tonight's address. So if you'd like to take any photos and post them on social media, that would be really great. And the hashtag would just be Gen Z Hamilton. So thank you very much for doing that, all right? So I'm going to give a brief introduction of who we have here and why she's here. So I'm just going to keep the microphone on and then I'll turn it off after. So Tashika Gomes is the founder and creative director of the Virago Studio, a creative agency for women and minorities, and the Virago magazine, which was recently voted in FeedSpot's top 10 online magazine for women. As a first-generation immigrant and woman-identified minority, she's motivated by a desire to help drive change for underrepresented and underprivileged groups in society. All right, so thank you so much, Tashika, for being here today. How are you? Good. All right. Well, we're going to talk more about like her business journey, different tips and advice that she can give. So I just want to start off with you telling us about the journey and how it all started 3 years ago when you and your partner decided to quit your 9-to-5 jobs and to pursue your passion project and live on a boat. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So about 3 years ago, actually, I started my first business, and it failed miserably. It just went really badly and really quickly. And I was a bit down on myself for a while, but I think it gave me the perspective to kind of take some time out and reevaluate what I was really passionate about and what I really wanted to pursue. And I've always been passionate about journalism, about writing, and always passionate about helping and sort of being a catalyst for change for women and for minorities as well. And I decided to start a women's online magazine called the Virago. And the Virago means warrior woman. And in the Caribbean, Virago means warrior woman in kind of a bad way. And my mom is actually called the Virago, and it's pronounced in the Caribbean colloquially Virigo.
Okay.
To mean like a super fiery woman who is kind of hot-headed and really outspoken. And so I named it after her, kind of a reclamation of that word, because I don't think there's anything wrong with being a warrior woman. And I started the women's magazine, and I did that for about a year and a half or so. And then I started having a lot of these amazing female entrepreneurs who I either interviewed or who I'd been a part of the community and I'd met throughout the year, asking me to help them with their business, with their branding, with their marketing, with their design. And initially, it didn't occur to me that that's something that I would start doing probably for another 10 years or so. And I remember the first person that asked me, and she was a new mom, actually not a mom, she was pregnant. And she said, "Sheik, I'd really love you to help me start a business. I don't know where to start, but I would love to be able to quit my job at the end of my maternity leave and be able to stay at home and raise my child. And where do I begin?" And so I partnered with another creative in the industry who I'd known for quite a while. And we worked with her for about 6 months and just helped her build everything from the ground up, with her website, with her business plan, with her design, and everything. We covered across the board. And a month before her deadline, we set a deadline for her. She was able to quit her job, and she is now turning down business. And she quit her job, she's working full time, she's now pregnant with her second child, she's a successful company, and that experience was it just lit a fire in me. And I was like, this is what I've been looking for. I love doing the magazine, but being a journalist, I think we discussed this before, I kind of always wanted more.
Yeah.
I'd meet these amazing people and write these inspiring stories, but I wanted to see the change at the end. And so that's where it kind of always stopped. And so I think I continued searching for what else I can do and how else I can actually be a more effective catalyst of change. And so having that experience, I was just so motivated. I remember telling my partner, and I said, I think this is what I want to do as well. I think I need to create something out of this. And he was amazing and supportive, and I quit my job, which is very difficult because I did love what I was doing as well. And I just went for it. And it's been a year and a half since. It's been 3 years since I started the Virago magazine, which is still running, and a year and a half officially that I've been doing the agency as well.
And what was the major driver behind starting the Virago magazine?
So that was, I think, about 3 or 4 years ago. So initially studied in journalism, and I've always been passionate about working with entrepreneurs and working with small businesses, and I love being in that environment. And after about 3 years of working in media and working in the industry, I realized that I wanted to start my own thing. And so there was a moment where I had to decide, did I want to go back to business school, or did I want to have some real life experience with business? So then I did that, and I think I always kept going back to journalism as well. And I was eating up everything I could read about entrepreneurship and reading Forbes every single day, and Arlene Dickinson and everyone, like reading all these stories.
Yeah.
And I realized there was a lot of rags to riches stories and not a lot that covered the in-between. The in-between struggles, the trials, the tribulations, the journeys. And so there was a disconnect. And there's a place for those stories where it can inspire you, but for something that's more human, that can really continuously encourage you. I wanted to tell those more real stories, more authentic stories, more raw and honest stories, the stories of the bad bits that people don't like to talk about because it's not cool or sexy, and it doesn't sound like a press release, you know? So that's what really inspired me too. Any woman that I interview for the magazine, I make sure I'm like, are you okay with us telling the not so pretty bits?
Yeah.
And that's kind of a prerequisite. And so those are the types of stories, and we also have a lot of actionable material. So these are things that can actually apply to your business to help your business. If you don't have like any venture capital backing you or anyone backing, if you're doing this on your own, here's how we can help, here's how you can be inspired.
And I think that's what I truly admire about what you're doing with the Virago, is that you're telling those stories of the in-between process. Because a lot of us, when we read different stories about entrepreneurs and achieving success, it is rags to riches.
Yeah.
And not a lot of us can connect with that, because we feel as if those stories are a once-in-a-lifetime chance, right? And it's not something that we may experience as an entrepreneur in starting our business. So I really admire that. I really, really do. And you quit your 9-to-5 job, which I think for many people can be very scary. So what fears did you have when you did that?
Fears.
All the fears. What were those fears?
Oh my goodness. I've always been fiercely independent, in good ways and bad ways. There's a double-edged to that. So I never had to depend financially. Like the plan, we had made a 3-year plan when I decided to start a business, and my partner, who initially is a professional musician, he had taken a break, sort of an hiatus, and wanted to also get back to music. So when I decided to do that, it was before our 3-year plan. We said, this is not the time, we haven't saved enough, like this is just coming out of left field kind of thing. And so without his support and him saying, you know, it's okay if it's a little bit before, like I have your back. Like we'll be fine, and I believe in what you're doing, and you're super passionate. I think you'll do great at it. If it wasn't for that motivation and that support, I think I probably would have like gone part-time, and you know, it would have taken a bit of a longer journey. I was afraid of not having to depend on someone financially if I was wrong and if things didn't pick up, if things didn't go the way that I thought. You know, before you execute it in full, everything's hypothetical. Like even though I'd had a few success stories that year, you never know. So being dependent on anyone financially or emotionally, I think it's just super scary.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I definitely was in tears when I left on my last day, and I wasn't sure if I was making the right decision, but my gut told me that I was, but definitely had some doubts in there, but I'm so happy that I did it.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing for a lot of us when we quit our 9-to-5 job or we decide to go part-time so we can pursue our passion projects.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that scare us, but I think what we have to remember is that if you're truly dedicated to it, it will be worth it in the end.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the thing that you have learned, the biggest lesson from pursuing this passion?
Oh my God, a lot of lessons. It's been quite a whirlwind of a year. Like definitely lots of ups and downs, lots of highs and lows. I think what I've learned is I'm a lot more, I guess, resilient than I thought I was. Just to be able to experience all of those highs and lows and always have to just have thick skin and keep going at it and fighting at it. So that's definitely something I'm very proud of, and I hadn't had to do that in any other circumstances before. I always had a lot of stability in my professional life. So I definitely learned that about myself. I think I've learned how passionate I am about, and I feel beyond helping women with their businesses, I really do feel that I'm finally making some impact and some change in people's lives. And I think that's been my lifelong passion, and just trying to find a way that I can actually access that and do well at it. So really a recognition of that passion and some strengths that I didn't know that I had before.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've learned a lot about sacrifice.
Yes.
And I want to talk to you about what sacrifices you've had to make along this business journey.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, it was a kind of a 3-year plan that we had. And part of that plan was to fast track what we wanted to do. And so life was great. He had a great job, I had a great job, I had a motorcycle, you know what I mean? We were like having fun living our life. And we were like, you know what, this is great, but what is it gonna look like in 10 years if we continue? Are we actually doing what we're passionate about? Are we gonna have any regrets 10 years from now? And the answer was yes. We'd have some major regrets. We'll have some really cute stuff, but we'll have some major regrets. And so we decided to really change lanes and make some really hard decisions where we had a boat at the time that we bought for fun on the side. Just one of the fun things that we were doing. And we had met a few friends who were living on their boats. And so we started to toy with the idea of, okay, one of the things that we need to do in order to fast track is to really pare down and slash our cost of living and our expenses so that we can save enough and not have that financial burden, as it's very expensive to live in Toronto, for us to be able to invest into our businesses and be able to have one person working, so that the other person can pursue, and then we can like tag team basically. And so we decided to do that, and it was quite a journey of becoming minimalists. And we sold everything. We gave up everything, about 80, 90, probably 95% now of everything that we owned, everything that we had. He had a bit of a studio and a workshop, and he sold all his instruments. I sold everything from my office, and it was a process, definitely. I had a very large closet.
Me?
Yeah. So it's definitely some of the sacrifices we made. And just learning to live with less and embracing that process. And so after about probably a year and a half or so into it, we moved on to a very tiny boat downtown Toronto. It's 27 feet. It's supposed to be 30, so no one say that. Legally it's supposed to be 30 in order to live on it. We moved on to this really tiny boat and dedicated to living a much more simplistic, minimalist lifestyle. His studio went from like a huge studio to just his laptop and like this. We have one like sitting area on the boat, and I'm just with my laptop here. My closet is like 3 hooks, you know. So
And that's a big change.
a very, very big
Compared to what you were
change,
used to, right?
Yeah, definitely. And just being in that really small space, but we were able to definitely fast track, I think, knock years off of our journey for us to be able to pursue our passions, to be able to dedicate all of our time and money to invest in what we wanted to do. And that simplicity that lifestyle, I feel, has really been transferred in other areas of our life as well. Just being there every day is a reminder of the sacrifices that we had to make. Not going out as much, not taking holidays, just being confident with every decision that we were making in order to really zone in and focus on what we wanted to do.
And would you say those sacrifices were worth it?
Oh, 100%, 100%. I didn't really, you can't know, right, the impact that doing that drastic lifestyle change would have. Even the way that we view our businesses, and I think I mentioned to you before as well, one of my favorite quotes is, how would it look if it were simple?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something, not in our lifestyle and living that way, we've been able to apply to our businesses and for him for music as well, to make things a lot more accessible and not overthinking it.
Yeah.
So definitely, I've learned so much about myself and so much about living a lot simpler.
And what advice would you give to entrepreneurs here and young entrepreneurs who are starting their companies on sacrifice?
Oh my gosh, it's worth it. Just honestly, just go for it and you won't miss it. Like everything that we've given up and being in that tiny space, people think we're crazy. But it's amazing how quickly you can adapt and forget about all the little luxuries. We don't have a washroom on the boat.
So where do you go to the bathroom?
There's-
Do you mind me asking?
There's a community
Okay.
area, but I have to walk 5 minutes
Yeah,
to
yeah.
be able to go to the bathroom. But it's become so normal. But
Well, I guess our grandparents and
Yeah.
great-grandparents were probably used to having to walk a good 5
Yeah.
minutes to get to the bathroom.
we get so used to these
Yeah.
luxuries
Yes.
in life. But honestly, I know it's like so weird to say, but like you only have one life. You have
It's true.
like what are you gonna say to yourself when you're 80 or 90 years old and look back, like, are you gonna remember, oh, I'm really glad that I had that really cute thing? Are you gonna remember that you really dedicated yourself to following your passion and doing exactly what you wanted to do and making the impact that you wanted to make?
Exactly.
So that's what's really important. Those are the hard questions that you're gonna have to answer later on. And I think just always being aware and reminding yourself of that is a good way to go.
And I think you could probably agree that a lot of the sacrifices you made brought you that simplicity, which also brought you clarity, especially during the decision-making process with your business and clients and pursuing your passion. And how did you find that it brought the clarity? How so?
In regards to what type of
Simplicity.
Okay. I think that having those limitations. So when you have a limitation of space, for example, you have to find creative solutions in order to organize things. So that directly relates to starting any business, especially if you're starting by yourself. You have a million limitations that you have to come up with very creative solutions for.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think for some people, they may not want to go to, I'm not going to say the extreme, but to the level that you may have with your
Yeah.
partner of selling everything, almost 95% of what you had, to living on a boat and living more of a simple lifestyle. What advice would you give to those people who maybe need that simplicity, but not at that level?
Right. I think just be aware. I think be brutally honest with yourself. And then when you get to that place, push yourself even further. And just take it bit by bit. I think if you try, like for us, it was a process. If you try to kind of jump all in, it's not going to last. I think break it off in chunks, make it digestible, and then you'll get a lot further than that. You don't want it to seem like an insurmountable task. So you don't have to jump off the deep end and like go give up everything and like go live in a tiny space because you might drive yourself crazy.
And how do you think that
Yeah.
simplicity is going to help business owners regarding their business?
I think it goes back to just the feeling that things are inaccessible, and I'm really passionate about breaking down that barrier that we see, and that's sort of the narrative that you see in entrepreneurship and a lot of the glossy magazines. Making things simple just makes it more accessible, and you feel like you can relate. It makes it more human. It makes it feel like it's within your reach. It makes it feel like you can actually accomplish those dreams. This is a life that you can have.
And what are your goals? What are your plans for the Virago Studio and the magazine going forward?
I just want to continue to grow it and touch as many people and help as many people as possible, and really build a strong community of women and of entrepreneurs that we lean on each other and inspire each other.
And I hear you have some plans of traveling with your
I do.
business and everything. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so the great thing about it is that after, I specialize in digital, so I have been really intentional about making a lot of my business virtual. So it's a virtual creative agency. And so with that, I can actually travel now and be the digital nomad.
Yeah.
So for December, for the winter months, we're putting the boat up on the Heart, which means in storage. And so for 3 months in the winter, we're going to be traveling through Europe, and I'm going to be doing the business online and managing things online in that way. And he actually quit his job as well this year, and he does music, so he can travel and do production in Europe. So that's our plan. That's our little reward for having no bathroom for 2 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it'll definitely be worth it, right?
Yeah,
Incredible
exactly.
experience. So
Exactly.
thank you so much for all of the advice that you've given us. I hope that you were able to learn something from her story on simplicity, on sacrifice, and knowing that, yes, we hear these stories in magazines and on TV and read them in articles that there's people that go from rags to riches, but that may not be relatable to you. So I hope that her story and the stories that you hear from other people tonight is more relatable for you, and it can inspire you knowing that, yeah, it may not be rags at this moment for me to riches, but I can just embrace going with the flow and having my own business journey, and it doesn't have to be like all of the ones that you see in the magazines, right? So to end off, I want you to finish 3 sentences for me.
Okay.
So the first one is success means.
Happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just happiness?
Happiness, yeah. I mean, I haven't set out to be famous or to make a lot of money. I'm okay with knowing my name, or I'm okay with living comfortably. But I think it's just about being able to make an impact and being okay with yourself at the end of the day.
I completely
And I
agree
think
with you.
that's success.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And entrepreneurship is
Hard.
hard. I like these one-word answers. Happiness, hard. Why is it hard?
It just is. I mean, it's very difficult doing it on your own, and you can get in your head a lot.
Yeah.
I remember for the first 6 months or so, I was working from home from the boat, and I started getting some major cabin fever, where I would just, as soon as my partner came home, I would start chopping his head off, because he was literally the only person other than clients that I was speaking with for the entire week. And so those are one of the things. There are a million other things that you're faced with, and you just have to keep pushing for it. So definitely hard, but so rewarding. Yeah.
And this isn't one of the sentences you need to complete, but a question off of that.
Yeah.
What would you say helped you to kind of get out of that cabin fever that you had?
I started renting an office so I can be around
Yeah.
humans again.
Yeah, and networking with people, right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
being around people, so you don't
Exactly.
drive your partner and your family crazy, right?
Just being self-aware. I think being self-aware of, that's probably another thing I've learned, of your strengths, of your weaknesses, and putting yourself in an environment of honesty and people who are honest around you and be like, you're being crazy, or that's a bad idea, you know? So yeah, hard but rewarding, and yeah.
Good. And the last one is the lesson that took me the longest to learn is.
Don't need to do everything on your own. Like I said, fiercely independent, which is great a lot of times, and especially being a solopreneur, I feel like I can tackle a million things. I'm like a super multitasker. But knowing where to draw the line, you know, and I think I've done a lot of management over the years, so it's definitely helped me with learning to delegate. But I still have to sometimes check myself when I'm like, do I need help with this? Can somebody else do it? So that I can focus on something else.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any other final thoughts about the topic, or? you feel all good?
I feel great.
Good,
Yeah,
good.
those were fantastic questions.
Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much Tashika. I really do appreciate you sharing your business journey, and as you always say with the people you interview, just being open, just being honest, and having integrity to just tell your truth.
Yeah.
I really think it's inspiring to me, and I hope it's inspiring to everyone here. So let's give her a round of applause. All right, so I want to give us a bit of time now, the next maybe 10 minutes or so, to just open it up to questions. If any of you have questions for Tashika or just any comments, whatever you'd like. So I'll open it up to you. Yes.
Thanks for your talk, I really enjoyed it. So I've got 3 questions.
Awesome.
So the first is, the first business that you started that failed, I want to know what that business was.
Okay.
And the second question is lessons learned from that failure and how that helped you to go out to your new business and succeed.
Mm-hmm.
The third question is, you mentioned that your first client, you got her off the ground, you did A to Z in terms of your services, and you saw her really succeed. So I'm curious as to what that business was, that third,
Okay.
your client's business that
Okay,
you initially
awesome.
helped out with.
So the first business I started was a very poor version of what I'm doing right now. So I think trying to do it all myself. I wanted to start an agency, digital as well, to be able to help small businesses. And I purchased a piece of software because at the time there wasn't a lot of turnkey solutions available. Squarespace and Wix and all these things weren't really a thing. And so I purchased the software from this company in the States, and I thought I did my due diligence. But the mistake I made was not going to more professionals in the industry to really vet it. For me, I was being really kind of tunnel vision, hot-headed, that I kind of knew what I was doing because I had enough experience, but not having somebody else with me there who had more experience than I did to be able to tell me yes or no if this was bad. The software ended up being a really poor choice. It was not as advertised, and it wasn't able to deliver what I wanted it to do for the business. And I invested a lot of time and money into it, but I learned don't try to do everything yourself. Surround yourself with people who are way smarter than you are. Don't be afraid to ask stupid questions. If you don't know, that's fine. And the lessons I learned, right?
Yeah, that lesson's fine. And then the third, I guess, was the client that
The client,
you
yeah.
helped her
So
with. What kind of business was that?
she does prenatal yoga therapy. So new moms or new families, and she'd been in social services for about a decade, and had always done yoga, but it was more for herself. And so she was currently in school, and she's like, I want to combine those worlds, and I want it to be not only a yoga practice, but be able to offer some support to new moms, and for there to be a mental health aspect as well. And so she needed help to kind of meld those worlds and what it was going to look like and what the structure was going to look like.
Cool. And
Yeah.
it did very well.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Any other questions? Thank you for your questions.
No, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one question.
We'll go with you first, and then we'll go with you.
Okay, so my question would be that what is it that you repeatedly listen to from these young entrepreneurs or
Yeah.
startups? What is one challenge that you see is very common, and we think that is happening just to us,
Right.
but you see that it is just normal.
Cash flow.
Yeah.
Having that steady influx. I think just being able to multitask and manage a million different things, and many times feeling like you don't know what you're doing. I wish people were more honest about that, and more honest about how vulnerable they feel a lot of the times in running a business or starting a business, even if you've been doing it for a decade. I mean, if you're doing it for a decade, it means that you're now at a certain level where you still don't know a lot with people who are here. There's always going to be that time, doesn't matter how long you've been doing something. And so I wish there were more honest conversations about that because we're all experiencing it.
So do you think that they're not just that open yet with each other, or?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's trying to sell their business, right? Nobody wants to come across it's like they don't know what they're doing. But I think there's a way to find a balance to say, I'm an expert in what I do, but these are the things that I don't know how to do. And I think we just don't have that ingrained in our our society, because entrepreneurship it is a fairly new kind of thing. Our world is experiencing the boom that we're experiencing, and so I think that's something that's just not ingrained in us as yet.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And yours.
So I guess my question is in terms of making that jump. So from your experience, it was working and saving up money, and then you were able to make that jump. Do you think that it's better typically to actually work at a company for a few years, get experience and what have you, especially like recent grads and whatnot, and save up money and then pursue a venture, or just all in right away?
I mean, you have to know yourself and know, like, if you think you're very self-motivated, if you think that you can be really resilient with failure, if you are great with networking. I mean, I don't know if I had not had those experiences professionally and learned from people who are a lot more experienced than I was in the first how many years that I worked in the professional field in corporate. If I would have had the knowledge and the skills and the tools to be able to go out and do that, I think I would always advise to have some work experience. And even if you're working with someone or alongside someone, necessarily having the usual hierarchy corporate structure. But having that experience of working with another person, it's important for empathy as well and be able to relate to others. And I think that's an important process for anyone, whatever the journey is that you're going to be on. Yeah.
And
I was just going to ask, you're saying, a lot of us are kind of doing everything ourselves, and you and I were talking about that a little bit. And so what does that look like when you don't have an infinite budget, and where do you know what I mean? Like advising people as to, where do you put those dollars? I guess it just sort of is where you think you are weakest, or you know what I mean? Like
Right.
at the beginning especially, right? When
Right.
you're from the ground up.
How do you, well, I think just deciding on your priorities
Yeah.
and being okay that it's going to take a really long time and trying to approach it very realistically. And especially if you're funding things yourself, a lot of entrepreneurs, I try to listen to podcasts and tell more honest stories as well. And a lot of people have that financial background or have that support that they're able to hire people to do things. But when you don't have that, if you need to have a part-time job, or if you need to have a part-time job so you can hire someone, it's going to look very messy in the beginning. But I think doing whatever you need to do and not thinking that you need to follow some sort of path, like quitting everything and just going after, now I'm an entrepreneur. It doesn't have to be this direct line.
Yeah.
It might look really messy, and just being okay with that and being realistic about that. And then during that process, just doing as much research as possible, connecting with people who have more experience than you do. You'd be surprised how willing people are to help each other and support each other. If you say, for example, I am drowning in balancing my books, or whatever the case may be, which is a big thing for new entrepreneurs. There's actually this resource that I recently heard of called Swapcity. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. And it's a place where you can swap your services for professionals. And an entrepreneur that I know and I work with, she swapped her design services for accounting services. And so finding creative ways to be able to take those things off your plate and really prioritizing, thinking about what's going to be the return on my investment if I spend the time doing this particular task and focusing on this. Is it what I really need to be doing, or is it because I think it's what I need to be doing?
Right.
Yes.
any other questions? Don't be afraid to ask.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So when you're starting with the person who started the prenatal yoga business, I'm just wondering, her situation where, I guess, okay, I'll just get to the root of it really. I want to know how you ask people for money, doing something that you love, and feeling for me, I feel like I want to charge this amount, but realistically, I need like studio space and all this, and like it adds up. So I need to charge this amount.
Yeah.
So have you come across that where like you've struggled with charging someone an amount, or like how have you worked around that sort of?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of struggle with that a little bit, to be honest. Even the person that I helped initially, she's like, "Can I do it for like some of them free?" And I was like, "No, you shouldn't really do that. Like, don't set that precedent in your business, right? You're not valuing your service off of that. That's a really bad foundation to start. Not only would you create bad habits for yourself, you create bad habits for your client and your reputation. And so even if you have to practice. If you feel like that's a weakness that you're struggling with, and I practiced with it as well, where you feel like I need to charge this, but it's going to make me feel really uncomfortable, just keep doing it. And that's okay. And you're going to feel less and less uncomfortable the more that you do it. And then it's just going to come second. It's like, and this is what I charge. And that's, no question about it. And just continually, slow bit by bit, removing that doubt. Yeah.
And I think as well, just to add on to that, if you sound confident in what you're charging, it will put that confidence in the client as well, or the potential client. Because if you sound like you have doubt about your prices, then it's going to put doubt in your client thinking like, oh, does she really know what she's talking about, or why it's that price? So if you just say it confidently, this is my price, and if they have a question as to why it may be that expensive, or how it gets to that price, then answer it then, right? But I think it's all about just saying it confidently, right?
Practice it some friends.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's good.
Any other questions, or? No? Okay. All right, well, thank you so much again. I really do appreciate it, and thank you all for your participation in the discussion and just asking those questions, and I hope that it helped you today. So we'll give her another round of applause. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to give you a moment to get more coffee or tea or water, and we're going to do the draw in about 2 minutes. So if you haven't put a business card in the little green tin on the welcome desk, please do so now before we do the draw for the prize. And you can feel free to do any more networking if you'd like, and if not, I hope you all have a great night. And thank you so much for coming out. And the next event is next month, Wednesday, October 17th, from 7 to 9, this exact same location. So hopefully we'll see you then, okay? All right, thank you. Thank you so much, that was great. You were amazing. I really appreciate the honesty, that was really, really good. I was thinking while you were talking, I really am. You're a really well-rounded, awesome person. So, thank you. I knew though that the draw, so there's actually, I will show you.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. So there is this. It's a new startup about fitness and everything. So she's
still going. If you're watching our live stream, check back next time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I want to meet you. Sorry, is it David? Okay, nice to meet you.